chain. So you're really effectively splitting the economic value. However, the code is all that really matters. If the code continues to operate, the rest will sort itself out. The people who are developing specifically for Pulse Chain, let's say the guys who are building Famous.io, not related to Famous, they are making their own shorting system and allowing people to utilize. I
GMX,
think they
GMX copy, GMX fork.
a GMX fork. And
Yeah,
so
but I
they're
mean,
basically taking things that exist, and if these people do not want to go over, they don't have to go over. And the
but
useless
but what's
ERC20, PRC20 token will be over there.
but what's
Nakamoto, I wanna piggyback on that and add a couple things. I think we
Sure.
also need to look first principles. We need to look at the DNA of the founder, Richard Hart. How did he make his money? Richard Hart is not an innovator. Zero. That's not how he made his money. Richard Hart would take a particular business and optimize it or do something different, make it faster, make it cheaper, and that's how he made his money. And that's what he's doing here. I think the system state copy is on a foundational level. I'm a marketer myself. That's what I do in sort of the fiat world. It's a perfect marketing play. It's you are trying
Yeah.
to attract as many eyeballs. Now, what Harrison was saying is very true. Let's say that 85% of the people that get their free pulse copy don't come over. 90% don't
Yeah.
come. That 10%
I
is a
yeah. I mean,
massive start, brother. That
yeah.
10%
That's
is
that.
insane.
Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it, actually. I think the whole system state copy thing makes a lot more sense as a marketing idea than as like an actual serious technical proposal.
Absolutely.
Because here's the thing, another way you can look at it is it's like the mother of all airdrops. And airdrops are already used in crypto, right? You got like an airdrop for bridging to AVAX. You got the good bridging token. There's you got an airdrop for using Uniswap, right? Just for using it. So I guess the idea here is like you will get an airdrop of everything you own on ETH just for like turning up on Pulse Chain, and that probably will draw some people at least. And even if it's a small fraction, it's a lot of people. It's marketing, it's eyeballs. Now, the thing is, I
You
probably
got it, brother.
yeah, I probably suspect that actually technically this is not going to go that well because like Ethereum is just not designed to be copied like this, right? Because there are some things that really don't copy over, like the centralized stable coins, like any external dependencies that the smart contracts have, like ENS isn't going to work properly, at least not out of the box. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of things that basically don't work. So, Pulse Chain is probably going to be doesn't work chain. But I mean, if at least if that draws some attention at the beginning, it could give it a start. And then maybe after a year or two, all of this like stuff that got copied over is just going to be forgotten about, and it's going to be the organic apps that the organic dApps that actually got developed specifically for Hex are going to be the ones that are really going to win. So I guess, Pulse Chain could be a viable L1. I mean, the problem I have with the idea of tying Hex to Pulse Chain is I'm personally very bearish on L1s right now. I think the season of alt L1s is over. It's done. Everything's going to either die or become an Ethereum L2 because of the superior security that being an Ethereum L2 offers.
But Nakamoto, let's take one step at a time. I may, let's say that you're right. Let's just assume that you're right. Again, assumption. I don't think this is an overnight transition. I don't
Yeah.
think that you're going to suddenly erase all those L1 ecosystems and have a L2 world. So even if you're right, we are what? 5 years away from that, 10 years away from that. I
Well, I
don't
mean,
think that's happening
it might
anytime
not
soon,
really be
brother.
that long, though. It might not really be that long. I mean, a lot of these things, there's, Starkware, there's a whole bunch of them actually that are really, ready to go almost, and a whole bunch that are already going, like Messis and Bobber and Arbitrum and Optimism. Like, you know, there is no longer really a problem on Ethereum with there not being enough block space, right? The problem is actually there's not enough block space because nobody wants to use anything. So, I'm
Not
kind
if
of
I could
yeah.
provide
Go
a
ahead, Harrison.
counterpoint. I think, in general, you would be right if Richard Hart didn't hold multiple $1 billion to fund the build out of his ecosystem.
Yeah.
And he does. So I think he's going to have enough incentive. Ethereum Foundation probably is poorer than Richard Hart is right now. It's crazy as that sounds. So he could definitely fucking fund his ecosystem if he wanted to. He's not going to tell you he will, because that would be misrepresenting himself as a security, right? That's the profit from the effort of others. So in some ways, that's kind of like uber bullish. Just in the background, he has a lot of incentive to put billions into growing this ecosystem out.
And I want to piggyback on Nakamoto. I want to piggyback on what Harrison says. Again, not from a tech perspective, from just a business marketing perspective. There's also great incentive in very, very wealthy hexagons. And it's well known in the community that there's about 7 to 10 billionaires, right? People who took out a tremendous amount of liquid from Hex that have just already a built-in incentive to try to make that. So what you have is you have an L1 with enormous capital backing that's not VC backing. We know that VCs want to get in and they want to get out. They want to make their money. Here you have individuals who made it in Hex and want to reinvest that capital into that L1. So I think in addition to what Harrison was saying, which is, yes, we have RH. By the way, he did a great interview with Eric Wall, where at the end of that interview, he was hinting at that. He was hinting at that without hinting at that. So I think there is some kind of backing for what Harrison was saying. I think there's a lot of, from an investor perspective, there's a lot of incentive with big capital players that want to come in day one. That did not happen with any of the other L1s. And guys, I think we have to, try to look at apples to apples. These L1s made it, and they were absolute ghost chains. What do you think?
Yeah.
I want to mention one point before you go, Maka. One thing I want to mention is Avalanche and all those other L1s, they had these incentives at the beginning. I remember Avalanche had 150 million. That's what really catalyzed their mainstream adoption, was that liquidity incentive that they were giving people. Yeah. Remember that? That was like
exactly. That's what made, like, all of the L1s ultimately basically just paid for users, right, in order to kickstart the ecosystem. And that's what caused the big run on Matic. That's what caused the big run on Sol. That's what caused the big run on AVAX. So it's all the same scam, right? Like, you just basically pay people to come over. Except maybe, like, Richard Hart has found a more capital efficient way of doing this by, instead of like paying people with incentives, you just literally fork the whole ETH state and then tell everyone they've been airdropped everything and then tell them to come over and claim it. Somebody's going to provide some liquidity. I mean, yes, these things are not literally going to trade at zero. They're going to trade for something that's greater than zero. And so that will incentivize some people to come over and take a look at it. And then hopefully, from that beginning, from that just sort of gigantic airdrop, you will get, you'll get some genuine adoption, maybe. Anyway, we have Uvex USA, Value Monkey. You have a question.
Hi there. I thought I'd just come in and stick my dick in the mashed potatoes since everybody was talking over Hex Hangout. One of the smartest people in the room. He's trying to explain it, and you guys just talk all over him.
It's been a long time since I've heard that. That's from an MC Hawking track, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And then it was used in Beastie Boys as well as the intro. Nice. But anyway, nobody's really talking about the base layer censorship of Ethereum. I got into Bitcoin. I was a fucking absolute maxi on that. And then Ethereum pops up and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Give it a shot. And then all of the use cases for Ethereum came out. And then I started fucking around with a little bit of everything. And now, excuse me, my voice is weird today. But now we have Pulsechain coming out. Whenever I heard it's going to come out in 2 more weeks, who knows? But there's over 100 projects launching on it. And you're not going to have the problems that I see as an Ethereum fan. I don't care for the developers personally. That doesn't matter. What matters is the code. And the code right now I see is flawed. When you have the US sanction certain things like Tornado Cash, and then you have a base layer censorship going on in Ethereum, you're going to see a lot of people seeing Pulsechain as a bit more interesting. And then when you have all of your Ethereum validators geographically located in the United States of America, guess whose laws you're under. So that's kind of a scary thing. If you want to go back to the base layer or the base principles of crypto, Ethereum is literally fucked, and they're just shooting themselves in the foot over and over again.
I agree with this. And I think this could potentially be bullish for Hex. But here's my problem: are people actually going to physically run nodes at home staking Pulse in order to get like staking rewards the same they do as ETH with ETH2? Is that the idea? Like you're literally going to be able to run if you have
some of the. I'm assuming it's not just going to be copy paste, right? If it was only 32 Pulse, everybody would be running into validation.
Yeah, it can't be 32. It has to be 32 times. It has to be 32. It has to be 320.
It'll be significant. It'll hurt if you if you're a bad actor. It'll hurt.
Didn't Richard say that he was going to do something like 30 nodes? Like that's what he said. He said it was going to be more than what EOS had, but it was not going to be a large number of nodes.
The validators were going to be 33 validators, is what we remember.
Okay, well, hang on. Is it going to be a copy of ETH or not? Because ETH has room for 200,000 validators.
No, it'll be a copy of ETH POS that's been modified for.
So he's modifying it in order to reduce the number of validators. So it's not going to be as decentralized.
He's hoping to increase the transaction throughput by making fewer validators, which is exactly what EOS and Binance Smart Chain have done.
Okay, but that seems really dumb though, because like ETH doesn't need a stellar transaction throughput because it has L2s, right? That's the whole point. That's how Ethereum scaling is supposed to work. It's making it sound like Richard doesn't actually understand how Ethereum works. Like the Ethereum scaling roadmap is going to be through number one, dank sharding, so sharding it, but number two through rollups, right? So Ethereum's still going to have hundreds of thousands of validators, but it's also going to have huge number of TPS when you add this all up. So it's kind of a little bit bearish if he's going to say, oh, we're actually just going to have 30 nodes and it's going to be super centralized. I mean, that seems really bad.
Well, it's worked for Binance Smart Chain, and I don't think he cares about, the roadmap for ETH, whether it's going into layer 2s. Like, he's creating what he thinks is optimal for his ecosystem.
Okay, but then doesn't that just go directly against everything UVEX USA has just said? He just said, oh, ETH is bad because it's centralized. How are we going to fix that? We're going to modify the ETH code so that instead of 200,000 validators, it only has 30. Like, that's exactly.
It's a rotating set of validators, so it's going to be rotational.
It's going to be rotational.
Nakamoto rotational.
Well, what do you mean rotational? Like, I'm validating, and then so how much ETH equivalent do you need to be one of these validators?
Again, so we were originally taking the fork. We were basically taking Binance Smart Chain, forked it over because we were waiting on Ethereum 2.0. Ethereum 2.0 came over. It was a success. And then the developer said, hey, look, let's just take that instead because this is way better. There's less bugs and all this other stuff. And then anything that we improve on Guess will be improved on Guess for Ethereum and for Pulse Chain.
Right. So, but it's not going to allow 200,000 people to stake.
So the 30 was when it was based on Binance Smart Chain, and Pulse was built on that. And then there was vulnerabilities looked at, and it's like, yo, this ETH thing is going to be good. So now it's based on ETH2. So now it'll be unlimited.
So it actually is going to have hundreds of thousands of people. So you could think. So that's actually pretty bullish though, because so the dilution factor is 10,000, right? So you would need 320,000 Pulse to run a Hex Pulse chain validator. But if the price of that is essentially going to be like 0.2 of a cent per Pulse, then that would actually be within reach of ordinary people to run a Pulse chain validator at home. It's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Low competition, like that's and it'll scale over time, adoption or not. But the infrastructure is there.
Wait, so he actually got rid of the centralization? It's going to be an exact thing where it's totally democratized staking, no concentration in like 30 nodes at all.
Well,
that's what it's saying.
The 30 nodes was only because of it being based on Binance, which it no longer is. And the decentralization is economic power. If it costs 10,000 or 100,000 to stand up a node and a lot of people want to do it, if they're all located in the US or if Coinbase jumps on it, then that's the problem. So democratization is just economic power. And unfortunately, economic power is centralized.
Okay, so you're basically saying he's going to make the requirement the dollar value requirement to become a validator is going to be high enough that you're not going to see more than probably 100 nodes. And ultimately, if he wants the throughput he desires, he needs to restrict the validators, because you can't get extremely high throughput on Ethereum's chain, on the main chain.
Well, not on the main chain, no, but you can with L2s and dank sharding when they bring that out. You see, the thing is, if Hex deviates from what Ethereum is doing, then it's basically going to have a problem every time Ethereum makes an update. Like, Pulse chain is going to be on a different technical fork. So it might actually be smarter to just literally just copy what Ethereum does, right? Just do exactly what they do, right? And just scale exactly the same way as they scale, but you have a more, shall we say, a more organic user base. It's more ordinary people. So if you had the same number of Pulse chain validators as ETH2 validators, then you would need 320,000 Pulse to run a validator, and at a cost of 0.2 cents per Pulse, that'll be $640. So that's actually within reach of an ordinary person to actually just buy $640
When you
worth of
say
Pulse.
ordinary person, do you mean ordinary American or ordinary everyone around the world?
Well, I mean, even, around the world, $640.
So Nigeria, a dude spent $20, which was his whole life savings. Do you think that it's in reach for
but
Nigerians?
that's actually so Nigerians are not that poor, right? That guy was obviously poor even for Nigeria. Sure. Right? So the average, let me see what the GDP per cap is in Nigeria. I expect it's about 7,000, but let's see.
Nako, one of the points I want to make, though, is that in order for him to create a competitive advantage over Ethereum, if he just forks exactly Ethereum, there's no competitive advantage. There's no reason to move to Ethereum if he's just copying Ethereum.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Because what he can just do is he can say, look, there's no other chain. I mean, it's actually a little bit crazy, right? There's no chain that's just directly forked Ethereum and then said, oh, but we're for the people. It's more organic growth. It's got this kind of different vibe to it. Hexagons, I'm talking to a lot of hexagons here. I can tell they're different people. They're more ordinary people. ETH heads are nerds. They're weirdos, right? They most of them have had their balls chopped off because they're you know what I mean, right? It's just a different vibe.
Isn't for the hexagons, Nakamoto. I hope hexagons aren't the only ones being incentivized here. It's everything else.
Yeah.
It just so happens that the people who really give a shit about this are the people that are currently in this ecosystem.
Can I, Naka, you mind if I chime in real quick? Because I think what I've been wanting to bring up is relevant to this. To me, as an outsider, not a hexagon, it just feels absurd. It's kind of like, oh, there's this pulse chain ETH copied L1, which my question is, why is anyone going to move over there and start using that instead of Ethereum? Which I guess that's what this debate is about, right? But I think
Wanda, here's the thing. Why does Litecoin have any users? It's just a copy of Bitcoin.
Exactly. I think there's going to be tons of these chains that just exist and kind of are there, but they're not going to be the main. One.
Yeah, but my point is, Litecoin, even though Litecoin is basically just a copy of Bitcoin, it still has value. Sure. It still has users. In fact, Litecoin actually has more users than Bitcoin. This is a bit of a dirty secret, but Litecoin is actually more usable for paying for.
Of course, and regardless, it's not about if it has value or not, because I think Famous was talking about the ratio before. There's some truth in that, although I agree with you, Naka. Ratios can go down perpetually over time and be very painful. Yeah. But where I was trying to go is basically what's sus to me is, here's this guy Richard Hart, and with this pulse chain, it's sacrifice your money in this L1. And then I see him on social media and he's just absurdly flexing. And then we mentioned Pulse is supposed to be for the common person. To me, he's just another Andrew Tate character that is flexing socially to create this dream that makes people want to buy his stuff.
Wait. Yeah. Harrison, I think we have to add one piece here. Is that a feature or a bug?
Exactly, it's a feature. I think it's a feature. I think it's a feature.
It's an absolute feature. It's by design, guys. It's pure marketing 101.
Absolutely. Look at Donald Trump.
101.
Look at Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump is a rich man, at least he claims to be. He's flexing. Donald Trump went and ate like fast food on a luxury private jet, and like that was
Exactly.
rich,
I
right?
agree, but like at
I
the
get
end of
the
the day,
same
it's a
vibe. I get the
Donald.
same
Right,
vibe.
exactly. It's the same vibe. It's marketing to a tier. Everybody that's throwing their money in this and wasting their time thinking that this is going to be a valuable L1. Why is this an L1? Because it has to be, you fools. Because you're fighting for this as a separate chain against Ethereum, and it's Richard Hart, and I love him. And meanwhile, I've heard from Hexicans in this space, we don't know what he does, or he jacks off all day while we build everything. Famous was talking about, we don't know how much money he has or how much wallets he has. You know what? I do. It's all of it. It's the bags, it's the cars, it's the traveling.
So then, if it's all of it,
it's the burnt on the
so then if
pulse
it's
chain.
all of it,
It's not
you can
literally
look
it's
on
not
chain.
literally.
You can look on chain and see who's sold. And unfortunately, whenever you look at the origin address, which is what most people believe Richard Hart holds, there's no sales done on chain.
Yeah,
so that means that there would have to be some other. What was that?
I don't think he's going to sell from the origin address. I think it's much more
Right.
likely he's going to
And so he would have to have his own personal wallet, which he does hold, which is just like any single person who can purchase their own. Now, when a person has gotten in, if you're going to take him at his word of getting in on Bitcoin at $30, going all the way down to 2 and then all the way up, et cetera, and then having Ethereum where he has all this Ethereum, why would you not utilize the things that have higher price appreciation than not? Whenever we can look at Vitalik, who has stated on camera that he had told his Ethereum Foundation to sell at the top of the cycle 2 times. Two times now.
Absolutely.
He's already made this. Whenever we look at the sacrifice set, why do we do a sacrifice set? And why are they coming out at zero value? It's mostly because the American regulations and how people are taxed is based on an airdrop. If you get airdropped something and it has value, you technically legally have to pay taxes on it in some jurisdictions.
Exactly.
It's the same reason why whenever you system state copied Bitcoin and you gave Hex away, no one had to pay taxes on their Bitcoin or their Hex in this sense because nothing was sent, nothing was spent. So it's just a way to avoid the.
Just to come back to Wando's arguments, I think the things that Wando is seeing that look bearish to him kind of look bullish to me. Like if this is basically the Donald Trump of crypto, who's copying Ethereum but giving it this unique kind of vibe, where it's more for ordinary people. You don't have to be, one of these weirdo developer types to feel included. I think that's bullish. I think that's very bullish, right?
And to double down,
I don't think so. I don't think anyone's going to use it. I think if people are going to use blockchain, they're more willing to use Ethereum than Hex forever.
People actually, that is the
here,
absolute lie. Here's why. People are more likely to utilize a centralized exchange than they are any of the other blockchains. And this is actually the problem that we have. More people get on and sign on to Coinbase, Crypto.com, Binance, buy a coin, sell a coin, and then they say, look, I'm doing crypto. No, you're not. There are more people that are resistant to pulling their coins off of the exchange and utilizing their coins on the blockchain than they are actually using a centralized exchange.
Yeah, I agree. But I think this kind of like idea of Richard Hart as the people's champion and kind of having this because what kind of makes me bearish about Bitcoin right now is that Bitcoiners have become too recalcitrant. They're too reluctant to actually do anything with Bitcoin. Right, so you can't if you want to have an ENS name, it can't work with Bitcoin. Right, you have to use Ethereum. The Bitcoiners are making this social network called Nostr, but it can't work with Bitcoin because Bitcoin.
Well, real quick on that one, the ENS, I can link my Bitcoin address to my Ethereum address, and so if you're using Trust Wallet, let's say,
but you have to use Ethereum, right? You have to pay.
Well, no, because I have to use a wallet, an interface. It's not Ethereum that I'm using; it's the interface.
Yeah,
so because Trust Wallet has interacted with ENS,
right,
it links everything through the EVM.
You still have to pay in ETH to register that ENS name.
Oh, sure, yeah,
right,
of course.
But that's what matters, right? People are paying fees. ETH is the one who's winning there, right? ETH stakers are ultimately the ones who are getting that money, right? So the fact that because they're the ones who get the fees, right? So the fact that Bitcoin is too reluctant to actually build anything useful makes me bullish on anything that is an alternative to ETH that is actually building, right?
So then doesn't that mean that you are actually very bullish on Hex because there's literally no one that does anything except for the people that invest in it, and in the sense that Bitcoiners, here's their arguments. Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million. Hold 0.1 Bitcoin because you'll be in the top 10% wealth. Never sell your Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to be so expensive one day you're never going to be able to buy it. You have to work for it. These are four of the main arguments that I've heard from Bitcoiners recently. Oh, yeah, by the way, we want to change by 2030 the amount of Bitcoins that you can send so that way it's less than the one Satoshi that we currently have. So there's going to be less digits than more digits because we have Lightning Network now. So there all these things in Bitcoin are changing specifically because the Bitcoin maximalists, based on the law of triviality, the numbers are so fucking large that they'd rather argue about shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem for me with Bitcoin is that they're just not building, right? They're just not building stuff that people are actually going to use. Whereas something like Pulsechain, maybe people will use Pulsechain. And I think maybe the social aspect is more like if Richard Hart, perhaps let me put it like this, right? If Richard Hart is going to basically copy Ethereum and copy all of the technical stuff, but it's going to have a different vibe, it's going to have a different community, it's going to be more accessible to people, it's going to be marketed differently, I think that's bullish on Pulse, and I think that's bullish on Hex as well. What worries me with Hex and Pulsechain and stuff is that they try and do something weird and complicated that doesn't really work, right? Or they get arrested by the SEC or something goes wrong. But like, I mean, if he literally just copies what ETH does and it has like a different marketing, and maybe like a different set of dApps end up winning on Pulsechain, I think that's super bullish, right? If he can market it, if he can push it out to the people, and actually it can even be bullish.
Wait, hold on, Naka.
Yeah,
There's no example of any other competitive L1 that didn't have a competitive advantage over ETH in their offerings or their specifications in terms of transaction throughput or something that has been successful. So that's why Richard Hart, from my understanding, has fewer validators. He wants to offer that same speed guarantee. He wants to promise people, if you build on my chain, the fees are not going to go up to $20 per transaction, because that's what kicked him off of Ethereum. And so I think he's trying to make that same guarantee to people that try to migrate.
It's a bit for bit copy of
Hey,
Ethereum.
Naka. Hey, brother Naka. I love being a speaker, but I want to give my space to, I think it'd be someone interesting to put into the mix. I see brother Jesse, just ask Jesse. Bring him in because he's actually building, so you'll get a builder's perspective also. Because you asked about, hey, what are these?
I can't see Jesse at the moment. I don't.
Just ask Jesse. All right.
Yeah, I think he would
He'll
have
give
to.
you a builder's perspective. I think he's not he's not a weird hexagon either.
Yeah, I can't see him though now. I think he'd have to request. But
okay, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, to Harrison's point, like, the issue maybe of like not having enough block space, of ETH not scaling, that's really solved with L2s, right? So I don't think you can sell Pulsechain.
That's not what Pulsechain is attempting to do. It is a one-to-one copy. The devs on Pulse are contributing back to the Ethereum code base. And by being a one-to-one copy, the goal is to maintain parity indefinitely. Get dApps on Pulse and get those same dApps on ETH. And as you said, some dApps will win on Pulse. And if you really love it over on Pulse, cool. When ETH gas fees shoot through the roof, you can still play in Pulse, and maybe there's a cross-bridge relationship, and maybe it's not a zero sum, but how can Pulse help ETH? What can Pulse bring to ETH to make ETH even better? And really the ZKs and all that are going to handle throughput. Like, is anyone blocked on throughput? Like, has anyone been personally harmed in here by throughput? It's like, no, that's, So
yeah, I mean, I think it's more the marketing side really that would make you bullish on Hex. Like Richard Hart's, from a kind of marketing background, I think, and he kind of like will find ways to shill it. He has a lot of money. I mean, that I think would be the bull case. I mean, honestly, overall from this space, it's made me somewhat more bullish than I was before. Like, it seems like there is a world here where basically the Richard Hart alternative to ETH, i.e. Pulsechain, becomes like the Litecoin to Ethereum's Bitcoin. It definitely has some parallels. There is kind of like
100%.
So can the Hex people confirm that Pulse is not going to have fewer validators? It's literally a 1-to-1 in terms of the way the validation and the nodes are being set up. There's no change
Yeah,
in the
I'd like to know that. Does anyone know that for certain from the Hex
there's
community?
no change in the speed and the throughput for Hex
You'd probably have to
for
talk to
Pulse.
Richard or one of the devs that are currently working with that, because at the moment, everyone's been left in the dark on anything specifically. So
Okay.
you'd have to contact Richard and ask.
Yeah, but he's probably
That
not
feels
going to tell
super
me.
shady, though. No, I mean, come on.
Dude, he's
No.
gonna
Well,
buy more Gucci bags, man. That's what he's gonna
Yeah,
do,
Sure.
he has an
brother.
Yeah, he can
appointment
do.
at the
He can do.
Rolly store.
So here's my question. I've purchased steaks, actual literal steaks, and I've purchased things for my fiance because I was able to sell and utilize some of my profits. Am I a problem in the community? I guess some people would argue that I am a problem because I've sold
Yeah,
Bitcoin,
no,
Ethereum, Matic, Crow, all these other coins.
I don't think that's a problem. I think the whole Richard Hart showing off thing, that's not
It's
that's
the
not
only
any
thing that
bullshit.
gets these people talking about him. If we're going to be
Yeah,
honest, Wando
it's
and
just
King, that's
it's just
the reason
marketing.
why
It's
you
marketing.
remember him. It's the
Yeah,
reason
because
why you go,
everything else
he's
is
a
copied from
scammer.
Ethereum. Everything else is Ethereum. So, like, what else is
Yeah,
there?
but I think that's fine, right? Like again, look at Litecoin, right? Litecoin doesn't really have any technical innovation over Bitcoin. It has like some minor differences in the parameters that really don't actually matter. Like Litecoin has, faster blocks, but it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, what actually matters for Litecoin is just being able to market this other thing, right? Because people often want an alternative, right? People want a different, they want to buy some Bitcoin and they want to say, okay, well, I want to buy another coin. I'll buy some Litecoin, right? And then actually, Litecoin is sort of more usable, right? Because more websites actually use it. Or not not more websites, but it's kind of like it's a bit less congested than Bitcoin is. Although Bitcoin isn't that congested right now, but basically there's always going to be blocks based on Litecoin. So I think actually there is this possibility for Pulse Chain to be the Litecoin to Ethereum's Bitcoin, and for it to just be an alternative. I mean, what kind of worries me about this whole thing, as I said, is that they just do something stupid and it all like fucks up. They just do something incompetent.
So Naka, here's actually a game theory that I've always had for a person who has NFTs, and I've never been able to get a good answer from someone. So we have our Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, fine, or your what is yours called?
Mine is a gatekeeper.
Okay, so a gate key.
Gatekeeper.
Okay, gatekeeper. Okay, so you got gatekeeper, and you got that as an ERC 721, and now you'll have the same exact NFT on Pulse Chain as a PRC 721. So we both realize and we both know that these NFTs have no real value. It's just whatever you can sell it for. Because whenever I have my own gatekeeper and I sell it for $10,000, that doesn't mean that yours sells for $10,000. And we could go into the rarity and how much yada. It doesn't really matter. It's what you can sell it for. Now, what we do know is that with Bored Ape or Gatekeeper, there is an X amount, a finite number of NFTs. These are all getting copied over. So what if you burnt your NFT on ERC 721 and now the only NFT of that exists on Pulse Chain? What is the real NFT?
Well, if you burn your NFT on ETH, and then you tell people that the real one is on Pulse Chain, then in some sense that means the real one is on Pulse Chain, right? But I mean, the question again is like, will people actually use Pulse Chain? That's the key, right? Will you get a lot of people to buy into this vision? And I think it's possible that the answer is yes, right? But it's like, what is it that made a lot of people use Litecoin? And I think it was like something special happened, right? People got it into their heads that there were like 3 or 4 main reputable cryptos, and it was Bitcoin, and it was Litecoin, and it was BCH, and it was Ripple, right? And people just kind of like socially sort of came to a consensus about that. And there isn't really anything special about the code of Litecoin that enables that. And in fact, all of those are actually kind of scammy, right? I mean, Litecoin is just a rip-off of Bitcoin. Ripple is token not needed. BCH is like the Bitcoin fork that lost. Like, they're all kind of garbage, technically, right? But,
it's just whoever accepts it. So, like, the reason
right.
why I use Litecoin is when I bought my Trezor, I used Litecoin. Why?
Yeah, same.
Because my Google Pay, PayPal, and all these other forms of my fiat standard didn't work.
Yeah, right. So I have actually, you know what? Litecoin is the only crypto. It's the only crypto that I've ever used to pay for something physically, and I had to get some some pharma, some medication stuff that wasn't legally, well, it's not that it's not legally available, but it's difficult to get hold of. So I said, I'll go to a pharma site, I'll pay in crypto. What did I pay in? I paid in Litecoin. Why did I use Litecoin rather than Bitcoin? Because the fees are a little bit lower, and it's just more convenient than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has a longer block time and slightly higher fees. So Litecoin is actually the only one I've ever used out of all of the cryptos. All the others are just investing, Ponzinomics, etc. So
I've used Bitcoin to pay for things. So I think you're, just to be clear, you're only in minority. I don't think you're the majority of
yeah, maybe. But if there was ever a website with a choice between Bitcoin and Litecoin, I would always go with Litecoin, because I know
I
it's
would
going
use
to be
Litecoin over
I
Bitcoin
know it's going
typically
to be
for
cheaper.
the price.
I don't ever
yeah.
want to touch Litecoin, so I'm never going to pay with something I don't own and don't want to own. So that's why
I don't. But I don't care. I'm from the generation of crypto people after the fork wars, right? So I don't have an emotional attachment to either Bitcoin or Litecoin. And whenever I see an option to pay, I'm going to choose the Litecoin option, because I know I'm going to pay less in fees. And
But Harrison is part of that part. So you're right and he's right. There's a set of people that are just so, I will use Bitcoin and I won't use Litecoin. But then there's people like you and me who might just say, you know what? It costs a penny for me to send Litecoin. So why would I send $1 through Bitcoin for a fee versus this? I don't care how much more secure Bitcoin is when I'm trying to purchase my treasure.
And for a payment, it doesn't matter, because you're only going to be holding the Litecoin for half an hour. You buy it on a centralized exchange, you send it to your wallet, you send from the wallet to the merchant. You're not like, Litecoin's not going to get 51% attacked in the 15 minutes that you have to touch it, right? And actually, Litecoin security is pretty decent, because it has its own ASICs, right? So it's not like
people can mine Dogecoin with it specifically. So there's its own tokenomics with that. Sure.
Exactly. So Litecoin is actually pretty secure. So I mean, there is, I think, this possibility for Pulsechain to move into that space. As I said, this space is definitely maybe somewhat more bullish on the Hex ecosystem, but I still worry about Richard's execution, right? There is a way for him to win this game, I think, and that way is to actually be kind of boring on the technical side and not try to technically innovate. Just copy ETH. Just do whatever Vitalik does. Just do this exactly
100%.
the same, right? And then just market it, because we know he's good at marketing. If he tries something creative on the technical side, he'll fuck it up, right? Because there's no
he's
way...
specifically gone on record saying that he is basically just copying Ethereum, and that there's one specific thing. So besides they're never going to be able to mint any more Pulse after it comes out. Great. It's only going to be deflationary. That's awesome. The other part was, he said, I can't tell you about the thing that will make Pulsechain stand out over other layer ones, specifically because I'm sure he doesn't want other people to take this idea that he has. So no one knows what the idea is, and if they do know, they're probably under an NDA.
A scam, dude. Sounds like a bunch of Fugazi money.
So then let's go with this.
It seems like a UST sort of mechanism, and
UST.
No. I think it's
dude.
might
Please
be
let me
privacy
speak, man.
related.
Please let me speak, dude. Terra tried doing the same thing. They tried putting AVAX and Solana and Atom on the Terra chain, and it was all fake Fugazi money. Like, what are those assets going to be backed by? And
so the UST.
Hold on. Jeez,
no,
dude,
the
please
UST.
be
You lied.
respectful.
You lied. Real quick, the UST had admin keys that burned and mint their coins based on this particular system. So I just had to clarify that.
I mean, like, I don't think it's like UST, but I can kind of see where Wabi's coming from here. The thing is, like, I think there is some questions that I would like to ask Richard in order to really be a very, very bullish investor, and that he probably wouldn't answer. Most importantly, like, what exactly...
Dude, he's gonna tell you to F off, and then he's gonna buy a Gucci bag, bro.
Yeah, probably.
So, King, the other thing that you mentioned was that what are these assets going to be backed by? Whenever you look at how they tried to back UST, they tried to back it using Luna, which is fake air that Do Kwon created.
I mean,
and the second time he tried to do this, he tried to back it with Bitcoin, tried to back it with Binance, tried to back it with AVAX, and he tried to back it with all the digital assets on the ERC20 and or what their respective networks. But the problem was, you can't back these fake fucking digits with other fake air. And that's all that he was doing.
That's why, like, Pulse sounds pretty bearish to me, man.
But see, you're going to be backing it with the respective ERC20s. You can't... Okay, so all these coins are getting...
So all the entire TVL from ETH is just going to be magically on Pulse.
All the digits will be brought over?
So
So
listen,
all
so
the
listen. So if I've got 200K, hypothetically speaking, on Aave, right? Do I essentially double my money without doing
No, you
anything?
don't.
No,
You don't.
So
You
no,
don't.
you're
no,
what
no.
you're copying the digits. So if you have 2000 Ave, you're going to get your 2000 Ave over there. That's the only
Yeah,
thing that
but
people can
you're
guarantee.
gonna
The fiat
right.
value,
The
no one can
value is
actually
different.
guarantee.
But
Exactly.
okay, Wabi. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to get these copies of all of your ETH tokens, but they're all going to be worth like basically nothing, right? Because you're going to have the real Aave on Ethereum, right? That the Aave team supports, and then you're going to have like the Pulse chain version of Aave that they don't
So
support,
so
and
Naka.
that's going to
So
be
so
worthless.
what's
Yeah.
the difference? What's the
By the way,
difference? What's the
Nakamoto,
difference
just want
of
to add
that
something here.
between, like, what Terra had, like B Sol, B Atom, B Avax? What's the difference, dude? Essentially,
The
they would be
difference.
mirrored assets,
Right.
and you saw what
Not
happened with
no no
mirrored protocol.
no. No. It's not quite the same because like those those things that you had on Terra, I believe those were actually bridged assets. This is not a bridged asset. Like when Pulse Chain copies ETH, they literally just create a digital copy of all of your tokens over on Pulse Chain. But those Pulse Chain copies, they're not going to be worth anything in reality. Nobody's going to pay you any real money for them. So the Ethereum version of your Aave token is going to be worth like $100 or whatever Aave is worth, and the Pulse Chain copy is going to be worth like 0.1 cents or 0.01 cents or some other bottom of the barrel number, right? So
And where the
basically,
backing comes from is so there's going to be Pulsex, which is basically the fork of Uniswap because we can't guarantee Uniswap is going to go over there. And you can bridge your coins over using Pulse Ramp. So let's say you have your Aave on ERC20 and you only want to transfer one over, but you have two Aave on Pulse Chain because you had two in your wallet. Great. You bridge over your ERC20 Aave. Now you have your wrapped Aave on the other network, and you can, should you want to, pair your wrapped and your PRC20 Aave, which effectively gives the same one-to-one value on this particular network. No one can guarantee the price. And so whenever we talk about, oh, well, what's Pulse Chain going to be right at launch? I'll tell you what it's going to be at launch. Zero. It's $0 for the first 48 hours because there's going to be no bridge available. Why? Again, we talked about how you can pay taxes on your airdrop. Now, whenever we talk about, again, how does the value get derived, something has to give it value. So as soon as Pulse Chain has a price on the Ethereum ecosystem, that's going to pair to everything else that's paired with Pulse. And that's how everything will get its value. Now, whether or not Aave will be worth the same on both chains, I have no clue. No one has a clue.
I'm pretty sure the answer
It
is
just sounds like another Ponzi to me, man.
it,
But see, now when you
won't.
use these words like
Wait,
Ponzi and scam, you need to define them because when
define
you say
Ponzi and
Ponzi, what do you
scam,
mean?
brother.
It's not really
Let's
a
not
Ponzi.
go back to that
It's not a
debate.
Ponzi. It's a silly debate. What they're basically doing is that it's kind of like imagine you took $100 bill and you put it in a photocopier and you photocopied it, right? And then you said to people, look, this $100 bill from the photocopy, you photocopy it and you cut it out with a pair of scissors. We don't know what this is going to be worth. So we're now going to run a market where you can pair the photocopied fake $100 bills with real $100 bills, and there's going to be some market price between the fake
It
$100 bills
sounds
and
like
the
Well,
real
that's
ones.
actually
fucking
kind of a
scam,
bad
dude.
That's
response because that's illegal. So I
it's
cannot
illegal, but
photocopy.
I
I
know,
can't
but
photocopy $1 and then sell it to
Dude,
someone else
if
because
try
that's
try
illegal.
that's
explaining this, dude,
basically
to some regular person at the mall, and they will
No
call
one
you
needs
a
to like so
scammer.
but that
whenever you sure.
but that's basically what Pulse Chain is doing, right? They're basically photocopying everything on ETH, and then once they've done that, they'll create markets between the real stuff and the photocopied stuff.
It's more like taking a
Naka, do
McDonald's
you
that
remember
already
that space
exists and then
grad, dude?
opening up another franchise across the street because it's the same exact McDonald's. It's owned by different people, and then that's the real difference.
Yeah, but
Well,
Except
if I want to
except
eat
in
a
the real
Big
world,
Mac,
it's
I
this
know where to get it. That's the thing, bro.
right.
well,
If I
yeah,
want to
you
eat a
can get
Big
it at
Mac, I know where to
McDonald's
go.
across the street, or you can go down to Old
Yeah,
Town
dude. The,
McDonald's,
the thing,
and it's
the
the
thing
same
is,
thing.
look. Ethereum, right? Ethereum is like Whole Foods, right? And from what Pulse wants to do, it seems like they're Trader Joe's, right? They're trying to be like Whole Foods, but in reality, it's just like a dollar store, a flea market with some hippie left wing stuff, trying to make it seem like they're organic. When in reality, they get their same supply chain from Walmart, right?
So you're saying it's
So
like McDonald's versus McDowell's.
no, it's like McDonald's versus like the soup
It's
kitchen, right?
I think
If I want a
Hey,
Big Mac, I
King,
know where
wait,
to get it, right?
Nakamoto,
But
let's dissect
yeah.
this. Let's dissect this a little bit, man. About Whole Foods and this, that, the other.
I,
Again,
I
let's
think
come
I
down.
think that
Let's
I
come
think the
down.
dollar. I
Yeah,
think the dollar analogy is better. You're literally taking the
100%.
dollar bills, photocopying them, and then creating a market between the real $100 bills and the photocopied ones. And that's going to trade at some exchange rate. So let's say these photocopied $100 bills trade at, $1 each or 10 cents each. Then you can say, because those photocopied $100 bills trade at some non-zero value, you can photocopy a house deed, you can photocopy the deeds for a business and stocks, and you can have a whole photocopied world where you can buy photocopied Apple stocks with photocopied $100 bills, and you can just do all of this stuff in this kind of mirror world, if you like. But
Hey, Nakamoto, let's not forget what the end game is with the photocopy. Let's just play with your analogy of the photocopy. The end game is not the photocopy. Remember, the guy he understands marketing. That's what he does. The end game is that there's going to be a small percentage of the millions of people that currently use the dollar bill. Let's say it's 5% that will say, "Oh, wow, I'm getting a free copy of my dollar bill. Let me go check this out."
Yeah.
And that's the end game. The end game is not the dollar bill. The end game is adoption. That he's going to.
I think the end game is Richard Hart buying more Gucci and Louis Vuitton bags. Let's be real here, dude. I could tell you the difference between Justin Sun and Richard Hart. What exactly is the difference? Because Tron tried doing the same exact thing that
that's not quite. I mean, Tron is a bit different than Pulsechain, right? Because you see,
I'm saying Justin Sun and Richard Hart, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there are some similarities there, but the technical side is a little bit different because Tron is its own kind of ecosystem. It has its own dApps and stuff. And here's the weird thing, right? Tron is one of the few cryptocurrencies, apart from Litecoin, that I've actually used because I've used USDT on Tron to transfer money between exchanges. Everyone uses USDT on Tron. It's the best way to transfer value is USDT on Tron, right? Why? Because the fees are cheap, right? So I feel like there is a chance that Pulsechain could become similar to that in terms of success. Although, the price action for Tron hasn't been very good because it's kind of if you set up a kind of everything is fake kind of world where you have fake dApps and fake money and a fake token on a fake chain and it's all kind of crappy, then it doesn't have great price action. But, maybe Pulsechain will do a little bit better because it has the connection with Hex, and Hex is actually a very good idea, right? So yeah. Anyway, listen, guys. I think I'm gonna have to cut the space short. It's been a fascinating.
Wait, Naka, I gotta ask one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Harrison. Yeah.
This is the only thing I want to ask. It's a survey for all the Hex fans out there. If you had to pick which token in the Hex Richard Hart ecosystem, is it Hex, Pulse, or Pulsex? Are you most bullish on? I want to have an answer from all the Hexicans in here. Which one are they most?
You got to answer quickly. Hex, Pulse, or Pulsex? Let me go.
I think a lot of people want to utilize Pulse, and so it's just mostly in the sense that people want to be able to buy and transact on a network. A lot of people like that, and that Hex is particularly a niche. Not many people want to utilize time deposit, certificate of deposit, or delayed gratification. So there's a niche within a niche.
So Pulse.
Yep.
Also, Pulse has the L1 narrative. It's very easy. You don't have to understand anything. A baby can just buy it and hold it. Hex, very complicated system. Pulse for the win.
Okay, what about
Pulsex long term? Pulsex with the tokenomics, deflationary tokenomics, that is going to gain steam long term. But short term, Pulse.
Okay. Any other hexicans here? J Sol, are you a hexican?
All of the above. Yes.
All of the above. So you can't pick one you're most bullish on.
No, there are a lot of variables in time frame and how you play. Yet all of the above.
Okay, I mean my answer would actually probably also be Pulse, to be honest, as an outsider. Although I can't buy Pulse, so I might just buy some Hex to get some exposure. But let me just make some closing comments before I close the space off because I got to go and do stuff. I think this has been an illuminating space. I still feel like I have some very big unanswered questions, like exactly how Pulsechain is going to work. But this space has made me somewhat more bullish on Hex. Obviously, the community is still alive. There are still people here. It's clear that this has potential. It has kind of Litecoin-esque potential, in my opinion. So yeah,
Naka, you should check the pinned tweets, bro. There's definitely some emotions running wild.
And
It kind of
everyone go
reminds me of
follow
that
Naka.
space.
He's definitely a great sport, and thank you for
Yep.
having me up, bro.
And
Naka,
when I
man,
said
appreciate
mad
it.
respect for you. You're a great moderator, and would love to do it again.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, I'm not against Hex. I'm not against
when I
Hex. I'm
said
not against
hey,
Pulsechain.
when I said all of the above, I also meant all of the arguments included, and then it's really welcoming to have an open space to discuss them. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm not against Richard Hart. I'm not against Hex. I'm not against Pulsechain. I do think it could be bullish. My biggest worry with crypto as a whole is that Ethereum doesn't have enough competition because the Bitcoiners are too resistant to change, and all of the other Altel ones are a little bit too scammy. So there isn't really enough competition for Ethereum. I would like to see Pulsechain as a serious competitor, even if it's a competitor in the sense of just copying it and adding a different marketing spin and having a different validator set. I think that's a valid form of competition, and I would welcome it. So, yeah, I do have some concerns, though, in terms of I don't really like to buy into something where I don't actually know what they're going to do. But, you know, maybe that's when you get the best deal. So, yeah, thanks very much for everyone for discussing Hex today.
You're not
Naka. Let's
alone.
do it again.
The Hex community is also not in 100% agreement on how things are going to slow down in the future. So you're not alone. Appreciate the space. Let's do it again.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
I think it's all a scam, dude.
Everything's a scam.
Have a good day, guys.
Crypto.
Yeah. And Nakamoto, man,
it is all one big scam.
You talked about your NFT project. What's it called? Just to kind of give you also a little energy here.
Oh, it's not my project. I just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any specific recommendation for it. I'm probably going to change my NFT at some point in the future anyway. But thanks
again,
guys.
brother.
Appreciate it. And yeah, I couldn't say bullish for Hex, but maybe slightly bullish for Hex. At least if things go well. So.
Bullish on Louis Vuitton bags, bro.
Bullish on Louis Vuitton either way.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I'm
Cheers,
bullish on the scam effect.
Thanks, brother.
No problem.
Ciao.